Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm an alcoholic. And I've done this work with the Big Book Step Study sponsor and a loving God. I've made my formal and financial amends. I'm working on living amends and trying to work the latter steps in these principles in my life on a daily basis. It's good to be here today. I have to say I'm a bit nervous. I've only been recorded one other time, and I'm a little nervous about that, but I was praying on the way out here, and I was finding all kinds of justification of why I shouldn't be recorded, and so that's when I thought, oh, I probably should do this. So anyway, let's hope God shakes the truth out of me or whatever. But it's really an honor for me to be speaking when Jess is sharing. It's her first time sharing, and she's nervous too. But we're going to get through this together. And when I found out I had said yes, and then I found out it was on resentments, and I was like, oh, that's great. I can talk on that easily. But and then I read the beginning of the format here, and it says 5 minutes to qualify, and then it's kind of open-ended, which I was shocked. So I'm not going to be so nervous about the timing. So I won't keep you guys all day. But anyway, if I'm to qualify, I would say I will keep it brief. And I started at an early age. I was probably around 5 the first time I had any alcohol in my system. And it was my mom. She had Knickerbocker beers with my aunt. They were twins. And I had a sip and I loved it. And so for me, the start of my drinking was I fell in love with the taste. And it's pretty funny that a 5-year-old would like dark beer, but that's what I liked. And so I didn't start a drinking career from that time on, but the next time I drank and drank heavily, I was in 3rd grade. Got really, really drunk, and then I was kept a closer eye on and didn't start drinking again until like 6th grade. So anyway, my point is, my first experiences with alcohol was because I really liked the taste. Then the next thing that I really liked was the excitement that went with that. And then as a teenager, what I liked was I could escape. And I used drinking and then, later on drugs to escape from life. I still like the other things. I liked the way it tastes. I had a lot of times that I was switching from one thing to the next, like it talks about, I think, and how it works. I would get sick on something and then switch to something else, get sick on a certain beer and then switch to whatever, peppermint schnapps or something like that, get sick on that, and then switch to wine. The thought that maybe I shouldn't drink never came into mind. I thought, well, I just have to get the right combination, and then it'll be okay. The thought of stopping was not an option for me. I really took a lot of fun in escaping reality. So, time went on. I got to the point where I did a lot of blackout drinking, had a lot of uncomfortability around that. I didn't like waking up in the morning and getting that feeling in my gut like something happened and I didn't know what it was, that feeling of loss of control. I have to say that was probably my saving grace in the end, because I didn't want to feel like that anymore, and I ended up getting a DUI and still continued to drink for probably 4 or 5 more months after that, and continued to do drugs for probably 8 more months after that. But the DUI is what ended me up in AA, and I really didn't want anything to do with coming to meetings. I had a family member that was in AA. I didn't feel that person was a shining example of AA. So when people talk about you may be the only copy of the Big Book anybody ever sees, well, for me, it kept me not wanting to go to meetings because of what I saw. So I have to be careful how I present the program and live my life, because it does have an impact on people. So anyway, I toyed around with the program for a while, probably close to a year, and then got to the point where I realized I needed to get honest and put everything down and really get into working the steps and have a sponsor. And, I remember in the beginning, I had a lot of sponsors. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was, you're my sponsor until you tell me something I don't like, or I go out and now I'm embarrassed to tell you, so I get somebody else, whatever. So that went on for a bit. And then I finally got someone I stuck with, and I started, working the steps. And So we get into this, about resentments. By the time I came to Big Book Step Study, I had done the steps a few different ways. Through the 12 and 12, I had done the 4-step a couple of different ways. I saw someone who was actually here today at another meeting, at another Big Book meeting, regular meeting, and I saw such a great change in that person. That person was really angry, having problems dealing with life, da-da-da-da-da. And a few months down the road, I saw a change in that person, and I didn't understand why, and then I found out she was coming to these meetings. And so me and a woman I was sponsoring, we both decided to start checking out this meeting, and lo and behold, we heard something we wanted to, that was helpful, and we heard something that intrigued us, and we saw people. I know for myself, I can't speak for her, I felt like there was something here. There was a greater connection with a higher power is what I saw, and I saw like a repeatable process. Everybody was kind of doing the same thing, and they were using this book, and I knew not much about this book, even though I was 20 years sober at the time, and I knew about the stories in the back. I knew there was some stuff in the front, and the very front was like, you don't even read that. And so when I started working the steps with the sponsor from this meeting, the book like came alive for me, when they talked about the gate clanging, and the guy feeling doomed, and the jaywalker, all the little stories that are in there I could identify with, and they seemed to come alive for me, like it was real. I could feel it, and these people were like me. And so that was eye-opening. I didn't know much about the front of the book. I knew the steps were in there on page 59 listed, but I didn't know there was like clear-cut directions and all that kind of stuff. So that was really interesting for me. I liked the part that we sit down with a sponsor and we read through this, and it gives me a good foundation doing steps 1, 2, and 3 with that sponsor, sitting and reading together and underlining, looking up words. Because now me and this person have somewhat of a relationship, and we've made appointments and we've kept appointments, and she sees I'm involved in wanting to do this and I'm going to be responsible, and I see the same. And so by the time I get to the writing, I feel like I have somebody that I can really talk with and bare my soul and whatever. And the other part that was different for me, not that I didn't have a higher power before I came here, but there was a big emphasis on bringing that higher power into my writing every time I would write. And so if I, got up to use the restroom, went to get a drink of water, whatever, I would come back, I would say the 3rd step prayer again, I would invite God in, and that became all these little activities, the looking up words, the definitions, all that kind of stuff, made the book, I could interpret the book better because of looking all this stuff up. And then the emphasis on bringing God in all the time was building my relationship with God as I went along through these steps. So then we get into writing this out. And I don't know how it was for other people, but I was told to sit with God for an hour, see what names come up, and write them down. And then, I'm done. I go back to her, and she goes, why don't you do it again and just see if anything else comes? And so that happened like 3 times because she wanted to make sure I got everything. And so I got all the names, and that wasn't too hard. And then the writing out of the resentments, that was like, woohoo, I can do that easy, and I started writing, and that flowed pretty good. I had a lot going on in my life when I first started writing these out. My father was dying of cancer at the time. I had 2 small kids. I was working full time. It was busy, it was busy. And life wasn't exactly easy. But I bring that up just to say, I wrote when I could. I'd get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, and I would say, I could write 2 resentments now. And I'd write them out, and then I'd go back to bed. And so I didn't have a good cadence of, I'm going to write an hour every day, or I'm going to do 15 minutes in the morning, whatever. I did what I could when I could, and I made sure to keep the pen moving. I've heard other people in here speak about getting so far and then stopping because they have a lot going on. And I shared at a meeting Tuesday, a regular meeting Tuesday, and 2 women in that group were doing this process. I don't think they're really like going to these meetings, but they're doing this process. And both were told by their sponsors, you have a lot going on right now, so you don't have to write. And I thought, that's not what I want to tell people or what I want to hear, because when I'm in the worst of times, that's when I need to write the most, because I'm inviting God in, I'm bringing him along with me, and I'm getting the crap out. And so, even if it's 1 a day, something like that, to just keep it moving. And another thing that, so I went over and I talked to one of the girls after the meeting, and I was trying to encourage them to come here. And she said that she was turned off by the meeting. She went to one of the Big Book Step Study meetings, and something happened with the way the reading was going around the room, and it missed a row, and people got upset. And she was like, why are these people that have done this work getting upset about something like that? And I thought, wow, we have to really be careful with how we are with people that are new that come to these meetings, and not to get so hung up on, if something skipped in the beginning, or somebody doesn't get to read, or whatever, to focus on, we really want to be able to reach people. Anyway, I don't want to go off too much on that, but I've said before when I share, I think it's important for us in Big Book Step Study of how we operate in other meetings and how we interact with people in other meetings. And I want people to feel welcome here. I want people to come here and want what we have and do the work. And why? Because they can have a better life. They can deal with things in a better way. I know for me, it's very helpful. And so this part of the work is probably one of the most helpful things to me. And it gives us an outline of what to do, Who am I resentful at? Write the cause. And what I was told with the cause, or, the resentment itself, keep it short. Some people say 10 words, 12 words, whatever. Try to keep it short. Because me, as an alcoholic, as I'm writing this out, I'm going to tell you why I'm resentful, and then I'm going to build a whole story around it of why I'm okay, and it's your fault. So I have to keep it concise. And then, what does it affect? And up here it talks about, so the resentment affected my self-esteem, my security. And for me, she had me write out for security. It could be financial security, emotional security, physical security, and then my ambitions. And I had a hard time with that. Like, what does that mean? Well, what was the outcome I wanted? I wanted a certain outcome. I didn't get it, and now I'm ticked. My personal relations, sex relations, what had been interfered with. So then I write that in as my effects. And so, like I mentioned previously, I was going to town on these because that's easy. I'm telling you why I'm ticked at somebody and how it's affecting me. When I got to the next part, and I had to look at my part in it. Where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? Where was I self-seeking? And where was I afraid or frightened? That was a whole different story. And I had a really hard time, I think the hardest time, with the dishonesty section, and then having to see, well, what is the truth? There was a part over here that says, okay, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. And I know that today. If I'm resentful at somebody today, it eats me up, and it affects how I navigate the world, my interactions with people. It says, to the precise extent that we permit these, so we permit these resentments, we let them stay up here and in here, do I squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? So I waste my time. I'm not helpful to anybody because I'm ticked off. But with the alcoholic whose hope, so my hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, the business of resentment is infinitely grave. So it's telling me, my hope and my growth, my spiritual growth, it's not going to happen if I'm hanging in resentments. So and then it talks about, well, how do we master these? Well, for me, how I master these is I write them out. And, I'm still right. I wrote one out before I came here today. And, I talked to someone yesterday, and I realized I have a lot of fears, too. So that's next week. But I had to write fears. I had like 7 fears this morning I had to write out. And, and write out the resentment. So this is how I end up mastering my resentments. I write them out. I look at my part in it. And I think for a lot of us, speak just for me. I got to speak just for me. The hardest resentments to write out were the cases where the people did anything wrong. If they did anything wrong to me, it became very hard for me to just look at my part. So my sponsor had to keep reminding me of that. Like, yeah, they did some crap that wasn't okay. They did. That had to happen. That happened. But you're looking at you. What did you do? Where are you at? And I had some really difficult ones, and I was like, do I even share about that today? But I think I've shared up here about it before. But it was a big turning point for me. It was one of my biggest resentments, and seeing it in a different light probably wouldn't have happened unless I came here and did this work. So we'll dial back the years a little bit to, I've got a year of sobriety. I'm trying to work the steps. But of course, the relationship thing's always a problem for me. I can't stay away. And so I go on this commitment, and we go to a jail in Brooklyn, and we speak, and somebody slips me their number. One of the inmates slips me their number, and he's cute, So we start communicating with each other, We start talking on the phone. I go down to see him. This relationship starts. And he gets out, and the relationship continues, and things start happening. And I realize it's not what I thought it was. And he's violent, and he's not a good person. And he ends up going back out drinking, and it's a poop show. This is what's happening. And so anyway, it ends bad. It gets violent. I end up getting raped, and I end up finally getting away from him, going into the psych ward for like 3 weeks, I think it was, or more. And, some things happened there that are so significant for me about the program. My family did not come see me when I was away, but the people in the program did. Took me to meetings. My windshield got smashed that night by him. People at my work fixed that for me. People, not family. I shouldn't, they probably hear this. But anyway, AA people are just family to me. They are family to me. So anyway, my point is, I come into this program, into this step work, 20 years sober, start writing out resentments. So my resentment's around that thing that happened. I'm resentful at you guys. Why did you let me go on that commitment? What's a girl doing at a men's prison? Why didn't someone stop me? And so I'm trying to write all this out. And then I have to look at the other side of it. What did I want when I went there? Was I there to deliver a message? Or was I there to take a note, And then I had to realize that most women don't go on those commitments to get numbers. I didn't plan that when I left, but I took one. And I realized that I had to take responsibility for my actions that night. Should that have happened to me? No, that's never okay. But like Bob always reminds me, how did I start the ball rolling? Because I don't want to tell you I started the ball rolling. I want to say, I'm the victim. Look what happened to me. This is terrible. And when I do that, I stay sick, and I learn nothing, and I don't take responsibility for myself. So I have to take responsibility for myself and what happened, and I started the ball rolling there. I didn't have to take that number. I didn't have to keep calling, So that was a huge revelation for me, to look at something in a different way, to start to look at things in my life as, wait a minute, let's dial it back a little bit from look what they did to me, to, oh, how did I start this rolling? So a whole different mindset for me. Yeah, it says, when we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set matters straight. So we go through all this work. We do a lot of writing, and we find out a lot about ourselves. I found out a lot about myself doing this writing. I found out, like I said, I was the victim a lot of the time, and my time's up. I played the victim a lot of the time, so I had to look back and see how I started things. I had to own my side of the street. I realized that a lot of my resentments came out of I couldn't accept people the way they were. And because I couldn't see them or accept them the way they were, and I expected them to be different, I was ticked at them. And I acted accordingly, And so, there's a lot of owning here. And when we get to the end of this, after we've done the other two parts, it says, if you have already made a decision in an inventory of your grosser handicaps. So I remember Court being here, and his explanation of grosser handicaps were the real obvious shit. I have made a good beginning. That being so, I have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about myself. And then the other steps come to help us be able to deal with all those big chunks of truth that we are trying to digest. And so anyway, I think that's probably enough out of me. Thank you for your time and patience today.